What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channel. And I know we're in this horrendous MLB lockout, which means no free agent signings and no trades at the MLB level until it is lifted. But at least we have an idea as to the route the Mets are going down, direction rather, in free agency in the trade market, given the acquisitions that they made and plan to make once it is lifted in these respective markets. But there's one player that we know the Mets have been connected to and will until the very end. That, of course, is Kris Bryant. So that's what I'll be breaking down in today's video. Everything there is to know on the latest with Kris Bryant and the Mets front, that current connection, and why exactly it truly feels inevitable that KB may find himself landing in Queens for the 2022 season and beyond. So as always, folks, make sure you stay all the way till the end of the video. Follow the details on my thoughts on KB and his current connection to the New York Mets. And of course, folks, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of Mets content and you want to see more great Mets content like this, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, on the notification bell. All those great things. Thank you all so much for the continued support, folks. Now let's jump right into today's video. As we all know by now, the Mets have been trying to land Kris Bryant for over a year. It literally feels like this guy is already a New York Met from the endless content that we've had on the channel and from the endless connections as they tried last offseason to upgrade third base with a guy like KB. The Cubs were stingy, however, and wanted a top prospect for a rental, so the Mets obviously said, no, we're not doing that. Then they tried again at the MLB trade deadline. The Cubs still had a high asking price, so then the Mets pivoted to his teammate in Javy Baez for a deal and rided with him down the stretch in 2021. And KB had himself a very respectable year splitting time with both the Cubs and then being traded to the San Francisco Giants, having over 20 bombs, over 70 RBIs, being a huge weapon not just for the Cubs but also for the Giants down the stretch. And while he wasn't necessarily perfect during his time in San Francisco, he did come up clutch when it mattered most, basically being their best playoff performer in their series that they had against the LA Dodgers. Unfortunately for San Francisco's case, fell short, but KB now finds himself on the open market, and yes, the Mets are connected to him. Going back to December 1st, according to Jon Heyman, the Mets were among multiple teams showing interest in KB, and while definitely it was the last day before the MLB lockout was beginning, the Mets were trying to make a late push for him that fell short because of the lockout happening. But still, now wrapping up things at this point, the Mets, you have to wonder why exactly they went down the route that they have with certain guys in free agency versus others. Why didn't they bring back certain players like a Javy Baez? Well, it's not about just spending big money, it's about spending big money wisely. And it's been known that clearly the Mets, they have all the money in the world to spend, and they could have spent that big contract on Baez instead of him going to Detroit, but they clearly didn't want to commit to a long-term deal with someone like Javy, and that very well could have went in hand with the type of ability that Javy has, his play discipline, all these other factors. But again, the reasons behind why the Mets did not reunite with Javy Baez are multiple, as we've discussed in our previous live stream. Make sure to check that in the description down below. But about spending wisely, as the Mets have made it known that they're still looking for a big bat, another position player in the offseason through free agency. There's no one that checks off the boxes more than what comes to a guy like Kris Bryant, solely talking about his versatility alone. As we know, Billy Epler has made it known, especially in his presser, looking at guys like Mark Canha, Starling Marte, and of course Eduardo Escobar, talking about really player evaluation, and he emphasized fully that he loves players that can play both in the infield and the outfield, and also guys that are good at getting on base. But when we're talking about versatility, clearly the Mets have had a motive this offseason, as you see here, between the guys on what they have been doing in 2021. Eduardo Escobar has played numerous positions in 2021. Mark Canha plays all over the outfield and can even play the infield if you really need him to around at first base. And Starling Marte, who only played at center field, can play in all aspects of the outfield for your club. And Mark Canha, Starling Marte, Escobar, they all said that they will play wherever the Mets need them to. So there's this heavy emphasis on versatility, and we know that Kris Bryant is nothing short of versatile. That's what really separates him from the rest versus someone like Javy Baez, knowing that Baez would only command either shortstop or second base really, versus a guy like KB who can comfortably play right around 5 positions, even 6 if you include his one-game stint at shortstop when he was with the Cubs prior to being traded. He's been all over the place. He's played at third base just as much as he has in the outfield, if not more in the outfield, especially in 2021 as he went over to the San Francisco Giants as well. So versatility is a heavy factor that Billy Epler has emphasized, and with looking for a big bat that has pop for sure, a guy that can be utilized in every which way, you have to look at someone like Kris Bryant here because of all that he brings. And something that Billy Epler also emphasized in his pressers of recent is that they want to make sure that they don't focus too much on the short term, but also have emphasis on the long term. And that also goes in hand with blocking prospects. What makes Kris Bryant so brilliant, as we've talked about in previous videos and live streams, is that you can get awfully definitely created with him. This is a guy that you don't need to have block your top third base prospect and Brett Beatty in the next year or so, because he can then shift to the outfield, shift to DH, shift wherever you need to put him to make sure everyone is in line to have continued success in the years going forward for the young crop of Mets coming in through their prospects. So you look at KB, you could be at third base, then shifting to the outfield, whatever you need to do. So the emphasis on making sure that, yes, you aren't too committed long-term to players, but also making sure that you're not blocking your top prospects. That's where Kris Bryant is an anomaly, a guy, a player of his own versus other options, as we talked about, whether it was Javy Baez on a long-term deal, given his lack of versatility, or other options per se, even through the trade route. But also looking at the on-base aspect and runners in scoring position, the Mets clearly want to upgrade on that this offseason and plan to before the 2022 year begins. And if you look at the acquisitions that they made outside of Eduardo Escobar, because he really handles things his own, because it was a bargain of a contract, has huge pop in his bat, so you're not really looking on base with him. It would have been wrong if the Mets didn't do that deal. But with guys like Mark Canha, Starling Marte, guys in the outfield, they're really replacing guys that will now have huge on-base aspects that have been notorious in their career for getting on base a lot and also clutching up where it matters most with runners of scoring position, either having high or above averages and runners of scoring position, and also gain a lot of clutch hits, gain the ball and play constantly. That's what a lot of these guys do, gain hit by pitches, getting walks, whatever it needs to take to help a team win. That's what all these guys bring. And Kris Bryant is truly no different. He's a guy that, if you look at how his on base was, runners of scoring position, I don't have it listed here, but he's literally had a right around a 377 on base in 2021, which also goes in hand as to why he had a low average runners of scoring position, because he was getting walked a lot. He was getting on base a boatload, had an over 350 on base throughout the regular season as it was. So while the runners of scoring position average was low, he still had over 800 OPS respectively in hand, because of him just being an absolute phenom, always getting on base and helping give the team the chance to still score and make something happen. So you have the versatility aspect, you have the on-base aspect, but then you also have a huge aspect, which is Scott Boras. As we know, the Mets signed Max Scherzer to that monstrous record-breaking deal at 3 years, over right around 130 million, shattering the Garrett Cole's AAV per year. And that was through Scott Boras. And Scott Boras is also the agent of, yes, someone like Kris Bryant. KB, again, he's looking for a payday. We are aware of this. It'll be interesting to see how his market shakes up once the lockout is done, because it could drag out going into the season, which could be warranted of a short-term high AAV type deal. In that scenario, I find it hard to believe any other team is going to outbid the Mets, especially on short-term high AAV, whether that's a 4 or even 5-year deal. I think that's something the Mets will be comfortable with, knowing that KB truly checks off all the boxes of what they're looking for and a starting third baseman. Then you can get creative, have Eduardo Escobar at second. You can either figure out if you want to have Jeff McNeil at second, maybe Escobar at DH. Maybe you want to trade Jeff McNeil to get a big asset out of him, maybe another middle of the rotation starting pitcher and some others. Either way, it gives the Mets a lot of versatility, a lot of ways to go about the roster in 2022. And more than anything, with inevitable injuries that happen, the Mets want to make sure that they're in a spot where whoever's going to be in their spot, they can handle it comfortably. So yes, these guys aren't all gold gloves in their positions respectively, but it's a matter of not just having versatile players, but having versatile players that are actually good. We need guys that are not just average MLB level, but above average, potentially in certain positions. That's what these guys bring. Kris Bryant had an awfully impressive year for playing 6 positions, no less, and you can rest assured that the Mets are going to do everything in their power to land KB as long as he is a priority. And given what Billy Epler has said at this point, it's really hard to believe that he is not a priority. Again, he checks off all the boxes of what the Mets are looking for. So rest assured, if Steve Cohen, Billy Epler, they are zoned in on Kris Bryant this offseason, just like that they were for Scherzer, Marte, Canha, and Escobar, if they're locked in on a guy, they're going to land that guy. I feel confident in saying that. We'll see if that comes true, if they will be able to land him on a deal that makes sense for both sides. And also if KB is more warranted to come here, knowing that Scott Boras now has a connection with the Mets and is going to be a heavy advocate for potentially going to the Mets on a big payday, even if it is, say, over a shorter term deal versus a 7-year deal, maybe a 4 or 5-year deal could get something done. Regardless, keep an eye on this, guys. I know it's going to be a long time until we see KB sign somewhere, but rest assured the Mets are going to be heavily in on him, and rightfully so. So Mets fans, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel about Kris Bryant landing with the New York Mets? Do you think it's as inevitable as I kind of feel it'll be this offseason or not? Make sure to let me know all your thoughts in the comments. And again, folks, if you ended up enjoying this kind of Mets content and you want to see more great Mets content like this, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, on the notification bell, all those great things. Thank you all so much for the continued support, folks. It always means the world to me, but I'm out here, and of course, let's go Mets, baby.